Hello, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. Today is going to be another very special day, an extra stream this week to talk about some exciting stuff. Now, obviously, the mainstream comic book industry has been in a rough place over the past few years. And while there are a lot of larger companies like Marvel and DC that have been desperate to make money other ways, like with video games and movies, things haven't been going so well for them because they're not utilizing a lot of the characters in their arsenals that people love, or in some cases, they've tried to replace those characters with new, more modern versions of them. And today, I have on a very special guest to talk not only about the disappointments us fans have gotten from the mainstream, but also the massive success of independent creators, RenieDraws.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, hello.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I'm
Of
excited.
course. Of course. I love having on independent creators doing amazing things and ultimately trying to prove the mainstream wrong after all of the years of disappointment that us fans have faced.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's I think what has happened with American comics in general is there's a general stagnation, and all the political stuff is, in my opinion, partially a side effect of that, and it's almost the natural cycle of creativity and how businesses go. You know, the innovators start an industry and a business, and then it stagnates. He becomes afraid of taking risk, and I see this across all of entertainment, not just comics. You know,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
just a lot of hubbub about obviously games right
Yeah.
now, but
Yeah.
also Hollywood has been just going downhill for years, and I see there's obviously all the weird political stuff, but
Ooh,
I
yeah.
think all these cultural things happen at once, and the indies are where it's at for comics, and I think for everything else. But it just so happens that comics are a medium where it's very it's more accessible. You can create an original visual product with a very small team. So I think that's why there's been so much success in the indie sector.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And obviously, every company right now is following a trend, which, of course, I talk about it a lot on the channel, and a lot of people talk about it on social media. But DEI in the modern audience, trying to make content that appeals to this magical modern audience that doesn't really exist.
Modern
Yeah,
audience,
yeah,
right?
right.
Oh,
And
yeah.
obviously, I get that companies want to make money. And at the end of the day, they need to, but they're not listening to the people who are telling them to their faces what they need to do. And in a lot of cases, very simple changes or directional shifts that could make them money. And that's where independent creators come in, like you, because you're actually listening not only to, of course, what you want to make, but also to the audience that you have and that is so fascinated by your work.
Right, 100%. I think in regards to not listening to your audience, what I see a lot of franchises and companies doing is they're trying to chase not just a modern audience. They have all these like crazy DEI people whispering in
Yeah.
their ears saying, well, you
Yeah.
have to just make everything about social activism because that's what people want now, which is complete BS. And
Oh,
that's not
yeah.
like what people want in stories has not changed over time.
Right.
We want the same kinds of stories, and we don't, people don't like propaganda, and they're being convinced to effectively produce propaganda. But
Yeah.
the other issue I see is a lot of these IPs are being turned into the whoever is handling them want to chase the general audience, which is
Right.
fine. I understand wanting to make more money, but I think this is, for example, what happened with Star Wars.
Yeah.
They like Star Wars is already massively popular, but I see just using Star Wars as an example, I think what Disney wanted to do was make it for everyone, popularize, and that's part of what making franchises that were more male targeted, changing them to be more female targeted, which is not how you reach female audiences. I'm nothing against
Right.
reaching female audiences. I think we should, but they're not doing it in the
Yeah.
right way, right?
Right.
And they're
Exactly.
through by chasing a general broader audience, they're sacrificing their core audience. They're trashing on who originally supported them, and that's not the way to do it, and they have no awareness of how stupid that is, and that's why we are where we at.
Right, exactly. And they try to convince people, whether, it's the activists within the companies that are trying to convince the higher ups, or even the activists trying to convince us that we are different now. People still want and have always wanted the hero's journey. We don't want the Mary Sue. And that's the problem with a lot of
Mhm.
entertainment now, is that they think that this modern audience exists when, of course, it doesn't. Or the closest thing to it is, sensitive snowflakes on social media. But they're trying to create this very different content for a group of people that don't want it in the first place. And they just view the older content and go, well, I'm not going to support you and your company now because of what you previously did. And then, right, they're pushing away the audience they already had.
Which is very, very stupid. Don't do that. Respect your audience. Rule number one of being a creator.
Oh,
Not
yeah,
hard.
definitely. And I completely understand that, an artist needs to believe in their own vision as well. Because if you're making something you're not confident in, your audience is also not going to feel confident in your product. But at the same time, you have to have a target audience in mind and ultimately respect that audience that showed up
Mhm.
originally.
Right, exactly, exactly. I mean, it's just kind of mind-blowing to me because I just don't understand that point of view. There's expanding your audience, then there's turning your back on who liked your work to begin with. Like you don't go out and tell them, well, you're all spoiled frat boys, for example, and we don't want your business anymore. That's really stupid. That's kind of
Right.
your core customer base.
Right. And
Just an
instead of
example.
respecting those people that they already have or have had, in some cases, like with Star Wars, decades and decades, they're absolutely trashing those people for this modern audience, which is like a fairy tale full of activist projection.
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely is. It's crazy. But we're
Oh,
gonna we're
yeah.
gonna fix that.
Well, hopefully. So, why don't you tell us, for those in the audience who might not know too much about Fiendish, what it's all about and who you are a little bit?
Sure. So I've been making comics for a long time. Hi, my name is Irene. I started out working in animation and gaming, bouncing all around the industry. I've been, I went to school for comics. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I worked for Marvel for a short while on mostly their YA titles, which was kind of strange because it wasn't really my genre. And I realized that creatively speaking, that wasn't fulfilling for me. And I
Right.
always wanted to have my own comic series. So this has always been my dream. And I decided probably almost 6 years ago now, like this is like the third book of the series.
Yeah.
But and I'm working on the fourth one, which is chapter 3. But yeah, I've been working on this for like 6 years because there was a lot of planning going into this. This is a long form fantasy, Fiendish, my series, and this is something that I've been wanting to do since I was 14. So probably around like 2018 or 2019, I decided, you know what, it's all or nothing. I'm going to quit the day job and move back home into my parents' spare apartment and just hole up and think about something to do. And I've been building this series since then, and Fiendish is what has resulted from that effort. And Fiendish is a fantasy mystery series. If you like classical fantasy with a little dab of horror, Lovecraftian horror, and really deep world building, that's what this is all about. I'm a huge world builder. I play a lot of tabletop RPGs, so
Yeah.
you'll definitely see that influence. Like I play a lot of Pathfinder. That's like the only hobby that I have because I don't do anything else other than draw and play Pathfinder. So yeah, this is a story for people that are interested in high fantasy and something that's long form, because I think what I don't see in not in comics in general, because I see this in European comics a lot, and obviously in novels you have that, but in American comics, I think part of the problem is a lack of diversity of genre, because there's a lot of talk about diversity, but what about diversity of genre?
Right.
And you know what? If you want to target a wider audience, if you want to reach a female audience or an audience audiences that are from different backgrounds, the way to do it is by creating new products and new works, but also diversity of genre. So what I have noticed is there's not that much fantasy. There's some, but there isn't really a lot of high commitment fantasy that is long form,
Right.
because when I was speaking to publishers, because I wasn't always going to crowdfund Fiendish.
Yeah.
Fiendish was I shopped around to publishers at first, and I noticed they were very afraid of taking a risk on something that was long. Definitely something that was new, something that didn't look like had already been proven successful, right? They're all very much all
Yeah.
about chasing trends, and that's fine. But I decided I want to create my book how I wanted to. I didn't want to compromise, so that's why I went to crowdfunding, and here we are. And this book has done really, really well. I can't thank everybody enough. This is actually the second chance campaign, because what I do is the original campaign was on Fund My Comic, and we got to
Right.
38,000 on there. So this
Yeah.
is amazing. We're trying to get to 45,000 total by the time the campaign closes, which is this Sunday. So hopefully we can get there. Fingers crossed. But even if not, I'll be so happy with whatever we can reach. And yeah, I'm super grateful for everybody's support of Fiendish.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of people I see in the audience who already know who you are and already have supported your books, guys. I did say it in chat. I will read periodically the super chats. We'll get to those in a few minutes. But yeah, you have 5 projects with right over, I think it was $280,000 in total, which is obviously insanely successful.
Oh, still so crazy to think about that. Yeah, and that's just on Indiegogo. So
Right. Yeah, that's
yeah.
just on Indiegogo.
Yeah,
Right.
it's really crazy. Again, I'm just so grateful, and there's multiple platforms and stuff. So that's why I tried. Fund My Comic is also a platform that I support. It's run by somebody I know, Luke Stone, and Fund My Comic started because a lot of creators wanted a platform that was specifically for comics, but also would not have would not sort of censor creators, which is something that we ran into on both Indiegogo and
Right.
Kickstarter, a lot of these platforms sporadically. So I
Yeah,
very much support that.
unfortunately.
Right. So my plan is to do all the platforms. I'll do multiple campaigns as
Yeah.
much as possible. I don't know about Kickstarter yet. I might though, because it is a large platform. So yeah. Anyways, it's this is like a whole frontier, and it's the Wild West. But I love figuring things out, and I love seeing other people have success as well. It
Yeah.
just feels really electric, honestly, in indie comics, and I'm all about it.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, over the years I've supported not only indie, comic creators, but also indie video game creators. And unfortunately, a lot of the time I have to talk about censorship because there is a lot of censorship from platforms like Steam in the gaming industry where they will not allow one game that might have more NSFW adult like hentai content, but then they'll allow others that are very similar. And like you mentioned, I have also covered platforms where comic creators specifically have had their books either censored and they're not allowed to be on there just because of who the creative is. And it's so unfortunate to see, but it's also so amazing to still see the success which has come from, all of the creatives, no matter who they are.
Yeah, definitely. It's that's something that I found very distasteful, and I mean that's something that I wrestle with as well. Well, do you just not support a platform when that happens? And I think it's important to say something and let the platform know that as somebody that wants to use their platform, that's not tasteful, just distasteful to me, like, because you are
Yeah.
taking a percentage of my money. I don't want to
Right.
be censored. And I think, unless it's breaking the law or something, like if it's like NSFW, I understand if it's like explicit stuff, but just make the rules apply evenly to
Right,
everybody. That's
clear and
honestly all I ask.
concise. Yeah,
Right.
right, and unfortunately, that doesn't happen a lot of the times. It's not very clear and concise, and then, like in the case of video games, they're hit with a ban, but then that's it. They're not really
Mhm.
told what content ended up kind of which was the straw that broke the camel's back, and it's so unfortunate. And we have, yeah, seen that happen with other larger funding platforms with, comic creators a lot, which is just absolutely terrible. But right, like you're saying, there are some cases where you want to make your voice heard and you want these platforms to know that this isn't okay, but at the same time, do you then decide not in totality to support the platform, and it becomes kind of like this balancing game.
Yeah, it's definitely complicated. And the thing is, the platforms change as well. Like the people that are running it change, so these things come and go. So it's one of those things where you just have to like every 3 months there's a new paradigm. That's what
Right.
the one thing you'll notice in crowdfunding and in indie comics. And I don't even know if crowdfunding will be a thing like 2 years from now. I hope so, because I like the business model. I like
Yeah.
being able to provide a premium product up front, because as a small company, the fact that I have to get the product printed and produced, and that's not really possible. I don't have angel investors or whatever you call it. It's the
Right.
customers crowdfunding and supporting that initial production. So if I can give them a premium product up front, and that's a collector's item, that's different than the mass market edition, which is how I run my business. All my campaign covers are campaign exclusive for new books, are campaign exclusive. So whatever is launching, those covers will never be printed again. And I
Right.
just like the interaction of being able to come up with stretch goals and other items, and a really polished campaign exclusive to give to early supporters. So I hope crowdfunding will continue to be a thing, but who knows? It's honestly the Wild
Right.
West.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously, I hope that it does, but at this point, I think that, with the rise of a lot of independent creators going to other platforms like YouTube and X and just these different social media in general, we are living in a time where it is very easy not only to kind of market yourself, but also make yourself known and your stances known. And with that, I do think that obviously there is a possibility that maybe these platforms will start to listen more to these creatives that have these larger voices and ultimately do have a lot of kind of pull with their audience and have these larger audiences that will stick by them no matter what. And maybe, not that I necessarily want to scare a platform, but maybe scaring them a little bit could help push things in the correct direction and ultimately the direction that can help creatives more than, the direction that they sometimes go in, which is damaging.
Right. Yeah, I think, well, there's a difference between what DEI people, for example, do. Like, well, let's terrify platforms and terrify your employers. That's different than just
Well,
giving
yeah.
honest feedback
Well,
as what
right.
you want as a customer. There's a clear difference, and I think we all logically know what that is.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, I know that you mentioned with Fiendish, you have a very big plan and you hope that crowdfunding will still be around and relevant in a couple years. But how long do you see the story going and how kind of far into the future do you have plans for? I mean, obviously things can change, but it sounds like you have a very lengthy timeline.
I do, yeah. So here's the thing that people tell you to not do for your first major project. Don't do something that's crazy long that'll take 10 years of your life. Well, I
Who
decided
cares?
to do, right. Who cares?
Yeah,
I decided to
yeah.
do that. So this will probably take like 10 more years. I have everything planned out. Probably like a year and a half every book. That's my plan. And I have these point 0.5 chapters. Oh, so I should explain.
Yeah.
This chapter is called 2.5 because this is a standalone one shot. It's still tied in the main story, but it can be read on its own. And I have a bunch of these 0.5 chapters planned between the main series. So the main series is like there's one story. It's like this mystery story where they're trying to solve this world-changing horror that's been this, like, it starts out as a demon infestation, but it becomes something else. Anyways, I'm not gonna get into it. You can find out more on the website, by the way,
Yeah.
fiendishcomic.com.
Let me bring
But yeah,
let
I
me also
have
bring
a
that up. I had the Indiegogo
oh
up, but I
yeah,
can bring up the website as well.
sure, yeah, the website.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of the website. I have a lot of stuff on here. Please check it out, everybody. I spent so much time on the website. I have
Everything is linked
character
in the
profiles.
description, guys. The
Yay, thank you.
Indiegogo, the website, your social media, your X, your YouTube, guys, everything is in the description. So yes, definitely go and check that out.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I have like there's a whole about obviously over here, but I have character profiles, I have a world
Right.
map, I have a pantheon. I'm actually holding back a bunch of stuff because I can't reveal a lot of stuff until it's revealed in the comic. I have like magic systems that I have to put up on there, but I have a constructed language because I built a language for this comic because I decided that if I want to commit and I want to make my world immersive, which is what I'm all about. I want you to really feel like when you're reading the comic, you're in it. This is a fantasy world that you can just sink into.
Yeah.
That's my ultimate goal. If readers all feel like that, that's why I just went crazy. And so I have a constructed language, and there's a free preview as well. You can check it out on there.
And I
But
do want to
yeah.
note, I love the map. When I'm reading anything fantasy and the map is bad, I'm instantly turned off from it, and I love the map. I just had to say it.
Thank you. I'm really proud of the map. I'm proud of everything. But
Well, yeah, of course, of course.
But yeah. So I have this whole plan with one book every like a year and a half, and I have these 0.5 chapters that are one shots that go between the main stories. And the 0.5 chapters, sometimes they're character backstories, flashbacks, sometimes they're side quests. It varies, but it's just it. But the intent is for them to be read in the order. Like 2.5 is the sort of backstory of my main character Casimir. So Casimir's story is he was a sole survivor of a mysterious demon attack on his hometown long ago when he was just a kid, and he escaped and he grew up somewhere far away and tried to put his trauma behind, try to just not deal with it. But years later in Fiendish 1, those demons resurfaced and he fights one, and he vows at the end of chapter 1 that he's going to find out where these creatures come from, because even though it's a fantasy world, these aren't actually common creatures. These are very strange things. It's not a common occurrence. So he starts out the journey trying to figure out what destroyed his hometown. He wants to avenge his family, and that's how the story starts. And 2.5 is a flashback chapter to explore his story as a survivor in more detail, and that's going to be fulfilling in next month. This is a really quick turnaround. We actually have all the work done. I'm just finishing the lettering. We're going to print in like a week, so everything is
so
like
exciting.
I'm like this right now. I'm like, oh my god, I have so much work to do. I need to get this to print. But yeah, we're going to be fulfilling this next month, and then I'm on to drawing Fiendish 3. So this is like a 10-year plan that I have. Everything is road mapped out, and I can only hope that I will have the strength to carry through with this.
Well, you are at this point, you are doing better than the man himself, George R.R. Martin. So I have to give you props for that, because he is lazy now. You are doing way better than he is. They just put out his cookbook, so at least we did get a Game of Thrones book.
What?
Yep, they put out
a cookbook.
Yeah, they put out a cookbook, which I do think is cute. Don't get me wrong. Like, I would buy it, but also that's what you're focused on, is a cookbook. Well, judging by how George looks, no offense, but I think he's definitely tested a couple of those recipes.
I don't want like cookbooks are cute. That's great.
Well, yeah, but they're additions. They're supplemental.
Right. That would be like if I did 0.5 chapters forever and didn't put out book 3, which if I ever devolved to that point, everybody is free to scream at me and tell me that I suck. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Song of Ice and Fire, and I'm very frustrated by this situation.
I agree. It has been half of my life since the last mainline book came out.
Same.
It is. Yeah, it is insane, and I want to support him. And he has put out some stuff, obviously, like some of the filler, like Fire and Blood, but it's just not the same. And then you have, on the other hand, Brandon Sanderson, who just announced his 8th secret project of the year.
I know.
It is absolutely crazy.
It's nuts. I'm like, I understand. Writing does take time, especially with something that is as complicated and nuanced as A Song of Ice and Fire, but let's be real, it's been like whole children and teenagers have grown. They're how long has it been? Like 15 years or something?
It's been 12 years since. Which one was the last one? Dance of Dragons? Is that the last one? Yeah, it's been 12, almost 13 years.
I know. Oh my god, that's insane! Right, you have children that are tweens that have been born and raised since the last book came out. Like, I'm just wow. I can't. Please.
It is absolutely crazy. And let's just take a minute, because I see some people in chat with questions. Thank you, Brett, for the 10. Love the new format with guests. Keep up the great work, Vera. Here's some money. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I love being able to highlight independent creators who definitely deserve a lot more recognition.
Thank you.
Poncho, chasing that black rock money. Yeah, that is what a lot of these companies are doing at this point with, the DEI focus, for sure. Waifu Taker, thank you for the 5. As a weeb, I'm still interested in American comics in spite of how shit the industry has become. Yes, there's manga, but I missed out on so much. I definitely agree. I think that there is still a lot to American comics that can still be appreciated. The older work, obviously, but everything new has really definitely gone to shit.
Yeah, I think there's I see occasionally good-looking stuff in, say, a Image or Dark Horse here and there. I don't even know if it's current. I'll just see series that look cool,
Yeah.
but nothing that I've been interested in reading long term. There isn't anything that's electrifying coming out, and I don't. And obviously, I have a manga influence. That's very clear. I grew up in Taiwan. I grew up reading manga,
Yeah.
but I went to art school here, and I have a thorough appreciation for American comics, and also I love European comics. I'm a big fan of Mobius and Black Sad, and I try to kind of merge all those influences. But I don't think that what we're seeing is the death of the American comic industry, so to say. I think this is a transformative state, and this is sort of it's darkest before the dawn sort of situation. But there's going to be change, and I think once we get past this stagnation, there will be a new generation of talent and new series coming out, and I think it's going to come from the indies. It has to. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
it does really suck to see that. And even as someone who didn't grow up in the States, I've read a lot of classic American comics, and it I I feel that pain of, look at how much better manga is doing. Look at the sheer numbers are
Right.
insane. And it's like, and on the American side, even huge series that are strongholds for decades, like Batman and Spider-Man, it pales in comparison in sales to manga. Like one issue of a
Yeah.
manga will
Yeah, I
outsell
know.
like a huge portion of the American industry. And I'm like, ooh, this is bad. This is
Yeah,
bad.
it is, definitely. And I know with the American mainstream industry, it has been in a rough place for a really long time. From 2016 to 2020, we saw significant declines in sales, and then we started seeing inclines again in 2021. But a major problem with those numbers that are presented now is manga is added to these lists. According to, I think it was NPD Bookscan, manga sales made up over 76% of the sales by volume of the overall comics and graphic novel category in the United States in 2021. Not to mention, they added like trade paperbacks in there as well.
Nuts. That's nuts.
It
I remember
is.
when I first moved to the States, it was like 2008 or so, and I remember going to the bookstores, and there was like a pittance of manga. It was like a few books, and it wasn't even like the hottest manga out now. I'm like, why are you translating these series that aren't even the most current thing that's popular in Asia? And then
Right.
fast forward to now, and you go into the manga or the comic section, and it's all manga. And I'm
Yeah.
like, this has been amazing,
Oh, yeah.
transformative to witness, and it's very, very telling. So,
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean, it's
definitely.
I
And
I think that the problems are, well, it's you can try to identify the problems, but to change course in for a whole industry to change course is easier said than done. It's just we're
oh,
going
yeah.
to have to go through some suffering, but I have faith that we will be reborn anew.
Yeah. And while I definitely obviously love manga and Japanese entertainment, do you think it's fair to group them together? Because I know there's been quite a bit of debate on if they should or shouldn't be kind of compacted together. Because, of course, there are people within the mainstream who say that that's okay because obviously it helps push their narratives along that the industry is doing good. But then you have people who say it's definitely not fair to group them together. But I wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Right. I am of the opinion that manga are comics. They are objectively comics. It's just
Yeah.
comics from Japan. And now with like all the
Right.
cross influence, there are a lot of series where the art style isn't even what you would think or what most people would think as stereotypical shonen manga. There's a lot of stuff like Vinland Saga and even stuff like Urasawa that doesn't look like manga. But
Right.
if you're talking about if it's that is different than saying, well, we're looking at sales numbers and mixing up manga sales numbers with American comics. I think if you are secure in yourself, how your industry was performing, you wouldn't do that. Do you think in Japan they're mixing in the small, like the tiny percentage of sales in Japan that come from American comics and saying, look, this factors into our manga sales? They're proud of what they produce domestically. They're like, look at how our own people are kicking ass. They're not going to mix in, if they're talking about sales numbers, they're going to put it separate. Like, oh yeah, by the way, Marvel books sold this much, but also here's Kodansha.
Right, here's this giant list.
Right, they would be transparent about it, so don't mix it in. Just be honest, because you can't solve a problem if you're going to not be honest, so you can't obfuscate it.
Well, right. And when it comes to the mainstream industry, obviously, I would love to see everything be turned around. I want entertainment to be good. It's like with video games. I don't want video games to be bad. I love the medium. I want them to be successful. But do you think that the people that are currently kind of at the top in the mainstream industry, like Marvel and DC, do you think that they are going to change? Or do you think that it would at this point take a complete overhaul, everybody basically being wiped from their positions and restarted to save it? And would that even save it?
Oh boy, I don't think I have enough of a enough industry experience to really say whether they will change. I
Right.
think that we are reaching a point though with seeing, especially watching the Oscars, and it seems like Hollywood is eating a little humble pie. It
Yeah.
seems like a lot of these corporations and the general audience, they're realizing that there's been a lot of wrongs done. There's all these
Right.
companies have tried to go down the wrong path, and all these critiques of, well, the fans are toxic. That's not true. The fans have just wanted good stories all along, and because at the end of the day, money speaks, and they have been losing money. So
Right.
I think the people at the top will change course slowly and quietly over the next few years, but the ability of these large publishers to change course will still be less than the indies. So I do think, I don't know, I have a theory that in a few years, once all this political stuff is passed and the publishers realize, well, we did wrong, maybe they will start looking to the indies and making really good deals and signing with some of the creators that have just been self-publishing, because that's where the good ideas will be coming from, I'm
Right.
sure. That's
Oh,
what
yeah.
I think that might happen, and those will probably be really good deals, because at that point the publishers will need the indies, and it'll essentially be, well, let's distribute for you, and you give us or you lend us your ideas. I don't know if I would take a deal like that, because I wouldn't want anyone else having creative control over my stuff. Absolutely not. I'm a giant
Well,
control freak.
right.
But yeah, I think that might happen. I think they'll slowly change course, but
Yeah.
yeah, honestly, but either way, it's not. I don't know. I don't worry too much about it, because the way I see it, like I have a small publishing house,
Yeah.
and there's less of a difference between indie and mainstream now. Like, of course, Marvel and DC still, they're the juggernauts, but
Yeah.
the actual difference, I think, is closing. And I think the way to to successfully think about, as somebody that's running a business and trying to promote your comic, it's, well, our competition are those other publishers,
Yeah.
right? And also, as American creators, our competition is manga.
Right.
So if you think about it that way, then isn't that more
Right.
motivating? And this isn't a, well, we're indies, we're little, and it's, it's not that way anymore. I feel like we're gaining ground, and we have to just keep pushing.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And, obviously you have seen a lot of success from going independent, but because of your history with the mainstream, because as you did say, you did work with Marvel for a little bit, even though it wasn't specifically like the type of work that you're doing now, was that ever your goal to be totally part of the mainstream? Because I know that you said you had tried to shop Fiendish around, or did that shift to indie become very obvious very quickly?
Well, I had always I didn't think of what I wanted to do as indie. It was weird, because again, I grew up with manga in Asia, but also I'm not from Japan, so I'd always had this felt this sense of, I really want to have my own comic series, but I don't know where to go because, or where I'm from, there is no comic industry. And in America, it seems like everything is dominated by franchise comics and superhero comics. Where do I go to publish a fantasy story? Or like I've had some like other ideas as well, some other fantasy stuff, some sci-fi stuff, but it wasn't it seemed like my ideas on what I want to do didn't mesh with what was the stronghold in American comics. So I kind of had no idea, and I thought for a long time that maybe I'll go to Image or a smaller publisher. So that was actually the first step that I did. I drew part of Fiendish 1 and I shopped it around, and the feedback I heard was it looks good, but it's not for us. Some people did like it, but I decided that I would rather self-publish and retain creative control. So that's what I did. But yeah, it wasn't, as for working for large publishers, that was never my goal. To me, it was a good experience to have, to gain that kind of professional experience, to be on a schedule. Everything is a learning experience, right? No matter who you work for. But my goal was always, I want to create my own thing. That's 100% been my dream.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously you have made that dream work, which is fantastic. And it seems like you definitely have these big plans, even though, like you said, sometimes people kind of tell you to maybe veer a little bit away from that direction. But I think that is a strength, because you can put so much extra thought and like pieces of information that will eventually tie into those novels later on, in the books later on, and the content that you end up wanting to create. And it feels more passionate, right? Like you've put more time and effort and passion than maybe other people.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think you need to have passion to do this, though. I mean, my schedule is insane. Like, I have sacrificed so much sleep. I have no life. I took out 3 hours the other day to go see Dune 2, and I felt guilty. But it was worth it, because it was really good. I liked it. But yeah, it's all worth it, because it's, I don't know, I think a lot of creatives, and especially if you're going to sacrifice so much to self-publish, and especially with comics, because comics is really work intensive, but honestly, any type of creative medium, even like I know people that just sacrifice years of their lives making games. A lot of people make indie games and they spend so much time and money into something that oftentimes doesn't even come out, and it's heartbreaking. But it's the same for everybody. It's the same with novels. There are a lot of people that write novels and they spend years toiling on it. It has to be something that you create with passion, because you have something to say. You love this medium. At some point in our lives, we saw that movie or read that comic or read that novel or played that game that really captivated us. And I think there's this urge in most creators to give back that feeling they got. They want to create something that has that magic, I like to say, because that's just what it is to me. And that's what you need, that to keep going, because nobody makes comics for money. Doing other things for money.
Well, right. And there are people that definitely want to see their work be successful, but if you're lacking that passion and all you are really doing is saying, I want to make a boatload of money off this, people can tell, and people become aware of that, and then they don't see that passion and that love that you've put in, and then they're like, I'm going to go elsewhere, because there are other people that are massively or I should say that are more dedicated to their product than some other people. And that's not like to name anybody specific. That's just life, right? Like we see it with Hollywood. There are people that join in on projects just to make money because they think they're going to make a boatload, but they don't actually care about the source material. And then we end up with, movies like the new Red Sonja movie, where the actress is like, we got rid of the source material. She's not going to be attractive anymore because the male gaze.
Ooh, I can't believe it. It's like all the things we were joking about 5 years ago are coming true. Like, this keeps going. Can you imagine if they made a Red Sonja movie where she didn't just was all bootylicious and hot and stuff, and that would be silly. Now this actually happening.
I know.
Absolutely insane.
And with, Madam Web that just recently came out, they had very pretty actresses. I mean, Dakota Johnson is very pretty, Sydney Sweeney is gorgeous, but they dumbed them down, had an awful script, and that movie almost broke the record for the most edits in a movie. The most edits in a movie was 2,800, and they had 2,300, and they had to keep like clipping voice lines that they recorded in studio over the lip sync, and it just goes to show. And of course, now you've got the actresses who are absolutely trashing this movie, and apparently the higher ups at the company and like the director and stuff are not happy with them, but it just shows how little passion there was. Like, I understand these actresses wanted ultimately to make money, but they almost tried to listen to people by picking these beautiful actresses, but instead the writing was awful. There was the feminist messaging shoved into it. It was girl boss to the max. The action scenes were bad. It just was a bad movie. So it's like they almost tried to listen and give us these beautiful women, but then they completely dumb them down. And that, it sounds like, is exactly what they're doing with Red Sonja. They know people know her for her femininity and the sexiness of her. And obviously, she's just a very strong woman in general. But it's like they thought that was going to be enough to bring people in. And now that we're actually getting those details and they're throwing out the source material, it's going to be just another major disaster.
Right. It's with this whole throwing out the source material thing. If you're going to make an adaptation, and this is something that I started noticing right around the time where I saw the disaster called Rings of Power, and my soul died a little inside. If you're going to adapt, it was so bad. So, oh my god! And honestly, Witcher Blood Origins was even worse. That was a travesty.
Oh, another one that hurts my soul.
It was so bad. It was,
yes.
But like, I remember watching Blood Origins and just thinking, this doesn't feel anything like Witcher. And even the new Star Wars sequels, they don't feel like Star Wars. And I heard a lot of people saying that. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And with Rings of Power, it didn't feel like Lord of the Rings. It just wasn't Lord of the Rings. And you had, in name, a lot of the names were similar. You had rings there, but it felt like some weird alternate universe version of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it was like the modern corporate version of The Witcher and the modern corporate version of Lord of the Rings. And they were all just so bad.
It was just bland, and it was so strange because it seemed like my theory is a lot of these people doing the adaptations, obviously they don't have love for the source material. So first of all, if you don't have love and respect for the source material and you're not going to honor it, then why are you making an adaptation? Go make your own thing, make something original, because obviously you have all these ideas, you want to astroturf someone else's creation. Just make your own thing, and then the fans won't be mad. What you want to do, speaking to those people making the adaptations, is they don't want the hard work of building something from the ground up. They want to take something, a name that's already famous, and then astroturf their own ideas on top of it, and they think that'll work. No, it won't, because it's insulting. Fans aren't stupid. You can't treat the audience like they're dumb. If they see you taking, say, Lord of the Rings or The Witcher and just changing it and corrupting it, even casual fans will spot it and they'll get tired of it. Like, don't treat people like they're dumb and they can't tell when you completely change a franchise and you took out the core of what makes the franchise great.
100%. And when you look at something like Rings of Power, you could take the general themes of Tolkien's work, like some of the creatures that are in it, or the, very good versus evil story, and all of these different like general fantasy-esque themes, and you could go and create something that you feel is modern, right? And it's diverse and it's inclusive. But then you can do that, but you're not going to face the amount of backlash because it is not taking an established franchise and butchering it. And that is the problem, is that they are willing to butcher everything. And of course, they want that big Lord of the Rings name because they know it's going to draw people in. But I would have no problem with these people going and creating the most diverse, inclusive, politically driven fantasy stories they want. I'd still roast them, but at least they are going and creating something new, but none of them have any creative bones in their body. And then we end up with the
Nope.
Rings of Powers and the Blood Origins. And it's so sad because, like, The Witcher, the
Oh,
base Witcher series, season one wasn't half bad, but that's just because they had Henry Cavill, who was a passionate actor, trying to make it
right.
into something that resembled the books and, of course, the games. And as time went on, they got farther from the source material because the showrunners hated him and hated the source material. And
Oh,
now
that's
they're facing cancellation and they're facing these major ratings dips, and they're panicking going into the next season because they've lost the person who really kind of drove the show to its popularity. And of course, Witcher was massively popular before the show and Henry Cavill, but I definitely think Henry Cavill brought in, let's just call them normies, because there are a lot of
I
people
think
who maybe
so.
wouldn't originally be interested in Witcher, but now that he's gone, those viewers are also going to go, and to boot, they're losing viewers like you and me because we don't want to support this bad, inaccurate show.
Right. And it's just, I mean, the fact that they let Henry Cavill go is just one of the most amazing follies of the past few years. I mean, among
Yeah,
many. But like it's just it is so rare to have an actor like him. He's a good
right,
actor, and he's also a giant nerd. He's not just somebody that he's there to do a job and he can act passingly and he looks good. No, he actually
right.
seems to care about the craft,
Yeah,
and he likes The Witcher. He plays video games, and when he gets in, like he loves 40K, obviously. So when he gets involved in something, he does research and he actually cares. And you let that go, and you were like, "We don't want to listen to you." What
right,
was you thinking? My
right.
God,
That was the biggest L that they have taken in such a long time. And
stupid.
obviously, that's not even just Netflix. That's also, looking at DC and, what happened with Superman and the DCEU. And they had these actors who I thought did a pretty good job at the beginning. And I would have loved to see more of Cavill. But instead, of course, they want another reboot and they want another actor. And then they ended up screwing him over multiple times. And it's so sad to see, especially when fans have this casting that they really like. And yes, of course, the Snyderverse had always faced some controversy, but I thought the DCEU still had a lot going for it with those actors. And that's why when he showed up at the end of Black Adam, people were so excited. And then we found out like 2 weeks later, haha, just kidding, this isn't actually happening. It's just multiple slaps in the face to consumers who care.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. Yeah, it's. I wonder who is influencing these the people that are actually holding the purse strings, because they're making the ultimate decision, right?
Well,
And I'm
right,
just amazed that, well, proven time and again that they keep making the wrong decisions. And is it really just they're afraid of social backlash, or they're afraid of like there's some crazy PDI people in their company that'll get them in trouble somehow? Because it can't be a logical understanding of, like, clearly they don't understand art. I don't
right.
expect people that are money types to understand
Oh, yeah.
art, and that's fine, but you should at least understand, well, at let the creatives do their job and pick the people that understand art and understand creativity, and just put those people, like, this is not my specialty, so I'm going to put people that are good at this in that position to create,
Right.
and I'm just going to fund it. And that's how I think good these large scale entertainment projects should be made. It seems very obvious. That's what has been happening up until very recently. But now there's all this other stuff coming into play with like all DI people like whispering in their ears, like you have to make it woke and you have to, stick chicken and make it gay, as South Park says. And that's apparently that's going to fix everything. They keep failing time and again, and they use excuses of, well, the audience is just sexist and whatever, which is not
Right, of
true. That's
course.
not the actual
Yeah, no,
problem. But they
no.
keep doing it again and again, and they don't
Yeah.
listen to what the audience says.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at another show like House of the Dragon, even though George R. R. Martin definitely has faced a lot of criticism over the years, you look at something like House of the Dragon and you see the passion that was put into it and all of like the costume designs. I don't know if you recently watched Netflix's Damsel, but you could tell that they wanted to make it like a Game of Thrones because they have these shots of like the dragon wings behind her, and you just see the massive difference in passion because House of the Dragon, yes, again, people are not happy with the end of Game of Thrones. I completely agree. But you see these actors that they've chosen, like Matt Smith, someone who knows the entertainment industry so well and what people wanted and expected from his character. And so many of the improv moments, like when Viserys is sitting on the Iron Throne and the crown falls and it was not in the script, Matt Smith picked it up and put it back on his head. And that was such an emotionally impactful moment. And it was insane. But at that level, you have these passionate actors, the writers, and then you look at something like The Witcher, which is a complete and utter abomination.
It's horrible. I mean, the House of the Dragon is an example that we have the talent. Good adaptations can still be made. You just need to, like, whatever happened that allowed House of the Dragon to occur, keep doing that. Just keep doing that. It's not hard. And it's like,
exactly.
Look at the show. And it's one of those shows where it hit all the points on, well, if you want a show to be inclusive, you want to have strong female characters, you want to have ethnic diversity, you want to have, like, you know, different kinds of sexual orientations. It's all there, but it happens naturally because honestly that's how George writes. If you read anything he's written, like, he's pretty lefty, and that's just what he puts into the world, but not because he's trying to speak on politics.
Right, he's not trying to inject that into the book.
No, he doesn't actually do that. What he does is he creates worlds that are just realistic. So he'll build a whole world that has varied different ethnicities, and then he writes characters really well. So it doesn't matter if a character is a man or a woman, he writes them well, and that's why his work is so compelling. He's a good character writer. And when that is faithfully adapted, you naturally have all these things like representation and diversity, and you don't need to force it. And it's a good adaptation because they put the art and the characters and the themes first, and it didn't corrupt what George originally wrote that made the story popular. But you know, I don't understand. That's all you have to do is just adapt something faithfully. Don't try to change it and astroturf it. But you know, I don't know. We're at the point where a good adaptation like House of the Dragon is a rarity.
Yes, it's a rare occurrence
of disasters.
Yeah, especially when we're living in the time of the Witchers and the Rings of Powers. I was so disappointed with Rings of Power because I am such a Tolkien lover and I love George R. R. Martin. I mean, I have all of his books behind me, and I have bookshelves of these fantasy series, and it's just so sad to see it happen because I want Rings of Power to be good. I wanted them to actually tell something that fell in line with Tolkien's work and give us more of these characters like Elrond and Galadriel that we absolutely love. But unfortunately, they just haven't been able to do that. And then they go and they boast about how, oh, well, season 2 has an all-woman writing team. Okay, that's great, but are they really the best for the job? Or is it just that you wanted to be able to brag about the fact that it's all women? Like that, these questions, unfortunately, we already basically have the answers to.
Right. It's with lines like that, when a company or a franchise starts advertising their work as, well, we have an all-woman writing team, so on and so forth. It's we've gone to the point where the problem isn't actually that they have a writing team that's all women. It's that because we know that there is an agenda, there's an obvious social agenda that's been going on for years and years in entertainment. When a project advertises itself, it comes out and doesn't talk about, look at the world we built. Look, we created a fantasy language. Look, we have like cool dragons and stuff. Blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Look at the actual merit and the substance of the story. Instead, they're advertising it by speaking about something surface level. Like, look at the skin color of the people that are creating it. Look at the skin color of the actors, and things that are honestly really shallow. That's become a tell that the work is not going to be good because they're not putting merit first. And they're going to, of course, they will twist in their own little minds that people just don't like to see diversity and so on and so forth. They hate all women writing teams. That's not what's actually happening. It's because when you say all women writing team and you lead with that, people automatically think you're hiring people based on their gender. You're not hiring them based on merit. Because if you were hiring based on merit and you just happen to have an all-woman writing team, you wouldn't need to advertise that. You would just have it. You don't.
You would
need to
just
say
do
anything.
it.
Like it's every single place I've been that has had put out really good product. You know what, like the demographics of, and like pretty much any project, any company I've been in, it's been just naturally diverse. There was no need to force it. I just find it really silly to think that, well, you have to, there's no way that any industry will be diverse if you don't just like force people into position based on immutable characteristics. That's honestly just kind of disgusting to me and really shallow, and it just seems very anti-American. I don't like it at all. I think all these things will naturally happen if you just put merit first.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And really quickly, I just want to thank some of the people in chat, and I do see some questions. Lotus, thank you for becoming a new member and also gifting 10 memberships to the channel. That is absolutely crazy. Thank you so much for the support. I see Poncho made a couple. Poncho, thank you for all of them. Actually doing better than they/them with the nerd voice. Sorry, I can't do the nerd voice tonight. The whole series will be done before Martin. It's probably true. You are probably going to have your series done before Martin even has the next book out at this rate.
Oh, I hope not. No, there's no way. I mean, I hope not. I genuinely don't. I want Winds of Winter. I want to see the series finished. Oh, please.
Oh yeah, I do as well, and I love the filler. Like, I absolutely love Dunk and Egg, and I'm so happy that they're making that into a show. Like, love those stories, but at the same time, I just feel like, what would I rather have? Continuations of basically all of this side content or Winds of Winter? And at this point, I've got to be honest, I would rather just have continuations of Dunk and Egg and Fire and Blood Volume 2, because I feel like he wrote himself into so many corners in the main story. He probably had it almost fully written, and then Game of Thrones ended. He saw the backlash and decided, shit, I've got to rewrite everything.
I mean, I think if that's how he's thinking about it, because I honestly have no idea, because he's not like very, he doesn't tell us what he's thinking.
Yeah, no.
But I think that's kind of silly, because what happened with Game of Thrones was it wasn't executed correctly. So with the books, the problems I see with the books are he's getting too distracted on a bunch of side characters. We're like in Essos forever. We fucked off to like Essos to like follow a bunch of people, which they're really fascinating characters. But you started a story with these central characters. I care about what's going on with them. Let's return to the Starks and the Lannisters and everybody and the Wall, and what's happening at the Wall. Tell us what's happening at the Wall. Like, I don't care about Slaver's Bay. I mean, we just gloss over that. So but beyond, other than that,
and Bran, I'm so sick of Bran. I'm so sick of that little rat.
It's like,
I'm sorry, I can't.
We don't need that much elaboration on how he turns into an all-knowing tree. Like, we get it.
I know. He should just be the tree and get the fuck over it. We get it. It's your personality. Fucking Leto the Second over here turning into a worm. We get it. We understand.
Like a worm tree. Oh, what if that's like the final boss form of him? He turns into like a worm tree who's just walking.
Wouldn't surprise me at this point.
All the trees are connected across Westeros and their roots and stuff, and he's this massive.
Well, that's basically what's happening. Is all the Weirwood trees are like connected, and he can go to any of them. And it's like, okay, we get it. That's cool, but maybe you could actually start showing that to us instead of having him be on a little sled that someone is pulling around. Like, okay, please.
Someone in chat says, "Get in the tree, Brand."
It's so true. Like, I think Bran's story's cool, but also it's a story that will not make sense until the very end, and I don't think we're gonna get to the very end.
Right. I'm at the point where I'm worried about getting to the end, so I want him to just get to the end. Like, we're not living till 200 years old, and George isn't. I mean, I'm sorry, it's just the truth.
And
I feel that pressure too as a creator. I'm like, I want to make sure I can create what I want to create within my lifetime. Like, I think a lot of people think about that. So I'm just I think he can still end the series. Honestly, I trust that the TV show ended how in broad strokes how he was intending the books to end.
Oh yeah,
They
but
just
he had
didn't
2 books of, 1,500
right.
pages to do it.
Right. They just didn't build it up and execute it in a good way, but he will. So I trust that if he just cuts out all the extraneous characters and focuses on those core characters, he could still end the books in roughly the same way. He doesn't I don't think he has to rework that much because I would still read it if it ended the same
Oh
way, if
yeah.
Daenerys like bomb King's Landing, whatever. It's I don't mind as long as it makes sense with how it progresses. Which in the books it would make more sense because Daenerys is a different character in the books. You could see that
Right.
darkness coming way earlier. So
Right.
I want to read it still, even if the show spoiled it. It doesn't matter to me.
Oh yeah, definitely. Geek Getaway, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships, much appreciated. I did see this question, and I know you're gonna have a lot to say. Chris, thank you for the 199. What are your thoughts on current day Pathfinder? I know it's about to be spicy.
I mean, I actually am just not gonna get into it because we play 1E and I just don't fucking deal with what. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be swearing this much. Am I allowed to
Oh no,
swear?
you can swear. You can swear. It
Okay,
doesn't matter to
I'm
me.
sorry. I'm a potty mouth. I get like a little too into things. Yeah, it's tiring with both Wizard of the Coast and Paizo. I mean, Paizo has always been a little kooky and stuff, and now
Oh
Wizards is
yeah.
also losing their mind. And I mean, the only thing I really approved of with what Paizo did was with the OSR stuff when Wizards was trying to change OGL. So that's nice. But what they're changing with Pathfinder, I mean, I just don't pay attention anymore. It
Yeah.
started with the whole we with the whole banning slavery thing. Well, slavery doesn't exist in this
Right.
medieval world where half of the planet isn't even medieval. It's like pre-industrial. It's like tribal. But no,
Yep.
slavery doesn't exist. Yeah, we're gonna live in
Right.
a utopia where that's just not part of human psyche. What? That
Right.
doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
it
And
doesn't make
so
sense.
yeah, I don't do organized play. We play, we have like a game that's been going on for like what, like 5-6 years at this point, and we play a lot of homebrew, and we just like the system. We like how crunchy it is, and I don't pay attention to what organized play is doing because I think it's all stupid.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And like you said, I don't want to get into specifics, but I mean, I've seen what Paizo has done. They have definitely gone in the progressive direction. I wouldn't say as much as Wizards of the Coast, but they're still guilty of a lot of the same things. And I don't get to play a lot of tabletop RPGs, but I'll always love Pathfinder 1E. Owlcat Studios Pathfinder Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous are both solid isometric TTRPGs that are like the old Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 games. But, it is unfortunate to see what has happened with these companies because I used to be, the beginning of my channel is actually a Magic the Gathering channel. And I talked a lot about like Dungeons and Dragons, and the direction that the company in totality has gone in is definitely one that I have not been able to get behind for a bunch of years at this point. And I'm sure that you've also seen it, but with things like Magic the Gathering, they do a lot of the collaboration sets. And then they ended up having the Lord of the Rings one where they race swapped, Eowyn and Faramir and Aragorn, and
You know
it
what?
was,
Oh,
yeah.
I blanked that from my mind. You're right. Wizards is way worse than what Paizo is doing.
Yes,
Oh, I can't
Paizo
believe.
has gone woke, but they are definitely not, at least in my opinion, as bad as Wizards of the Coast. Because I know that they took a stand against WotC over the OGL. They were going to create their own system called the Open Creative License or ORC, but that was their answer to the OGL, and they have tried to do good things for their community, but also, yeah, they are still like a pretty woke company.
Yeah, I totally wiped my mind with the whole Aragorn and Eowyn.
Yeah, yeah.
That was just insane. Yeah, I would say Watts because I don't play a lot of D&D or anything Watsy.
Right.
I kind of don't pay as much attention, but I just like point and laugh from afar. But yeah, whew, that's nuts.
Oh yeah.
They
I
just have to
mean,
lose
it's
enough money.
Oh
They haven't had
yeah,
no money
well,
yet.
yeah, and that's what's been happening is that they have been losing I mean a lot of money, and they've also been losing a lot of customers. They have pushed so many people away with all of the changes they made. And at this point, it's like if you're going to take something and you're going to remove central themes like slavery or remove certain races, at that point you should just not be working with that product anymore. And I get, right, it's Dungeons and Dragons, it's a giant name, they want to continue to use that name as much as possible to milk as much money out of people, but all they are doing is forcing more and more people away, especially when they do sets like the Lord of the Rings set where they're not only disrespecting their players but also Tolkien fans who went, wow, this is like a really cool collector set, I want to buy a box or two. Like I was going to pre-order several boxes and then I canceled it because I didn't want to support the changes that they were making because they're ridiculous.
Right, and which, by the way, I mean, I'm sure it looks like you chat already knows this, but it wasn't even a, well, he didn't describe the characters. No, like these are Tolkien's characters have detailed
Oh,
descriptions, or
yes.
not all of them, but at least Aragorn is like, we know
Right.
what he looks like.
Right,
He
he's
is
one of the
not, he doesn't
central
look,
most characters.
he's
Like he
very
had
well described.
several pieces of description throughout the series, and there's even been other works like fan works and stuff that have followed those descriptions for years, and it's like they completely wanted to ignore that. And that isn't solely just on WotC, but it is, their main fault. And the artworks themselves were pretty. Like they were not bad artworks. Even the race swap
Yeah,
Aragorn wasn't a bad art, but it wasn't Aragorn. And if they had put that art on another set, that art would not have been criticized because it still looked
right,
really good. But the problem was, you're telling me that it is this established character, and it's not. It's
right.
not at all.
Exactly. The art was actually really good, and I think
Yeah,
it's kind of messed up where what they're doing is they're putting forth representation, but they're doing it in a way that will necessarily get this beautiful painting criticized, and they put either minority characters or women characters or even creators in this position where they will get criticized and attacked, and it's not because they're women or minorities. They're telling them that you're being abused because, oh, you're a woman or you're a minority. That's not the issue. The issue is
right,
you're changing something established, and that's honestly a disservice to the characters and the creators themselves. That's like kind of messed up that that's the level of representation. Why don't
right.
you they could have created the Lord of the Rings set that actually was accurate to the books and to what Tolkien intended, and then they could have created a brand new IP again, or some like a whole different set, put that art on a different card, and people would have loved it. You're exactly right. Just like I said
Yeah,
before, if you're going to change something that much, just make a new product. Don't
right.
astroturf something that's already been established, or don't subvert something that already is established.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Poncho, thank you for the 6.99. Like I said last night, they may take our hobbies, but they will never take our freedom. I don't think that they are ever going to fully take our hobbies because there are so many independent creators, but I definitely think they are trying to intentionally damage them at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. But
Uh
I mean, we don't live in a, we still do have freedom and free speech, and
yeah.
we can always have our hobbies. It's just, but you can't, I don't blame people for being upset that they're changing. It's still disrespectful
Oh yeah.
to say Tolkien to make a bad adaptation, because
Right.
sure, you always have the books, but I don't like seeing Tolkien disrespected. I think
Oh yeah, no.
he was like a master, like one generational master,
Oh yeah,
probably
look at
more than that.
how he affected entertainment and, the all of many different genres.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, what we're talking about with D&D and Pathfinder, and none of that would exist without Tolkien. That was
Oh yeah,
all
no.
derived from Tolkien's work.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that there are writers coming in, and instead of like what Peter Jackson did, being humble and admiring what Tolkien built and wanting to do right by Tolkien, they're coming in and saying we want to tell the story Tolkien never told. Like
Right. But that's not what
that's so
people
much
want.
hubris.
Right.
That's not what people want, and that's very heretical, and it just kind of embarrasses me, to, well, not me personally, but I think it's embarrassing, and these people should be embarrassed that they think that they're such hot shit that they know better than Tolkien. Why do
Right.
you know better than Tolkien? Because your politics are the fashionable thing right now? No, your talent is not there, and you should be aware of that.
Right.
Be
And I mean,
humble.
even recently, Wizards of the Coast was attacking Gary Gygax and basically calling Gary Gygax a racist. I mean, yeah, I even have it here. But I mean, as you can see, Dungeons and Dragons senior game designer disavows how this series was made by white dudes, boasts that much of the original material would never pass our inclusivity reviews today. Nobody cares about your inclusivity reviews. We care about good content, and this is what they're focused on. This absolute disrespect to the original material. It is disgusting.
And as if there's something wrong with a product being created by white dudes, first of
Right,
all.
right. First of
How
all,
absurd.
that should not matter at all whatsoever what their skin tone was or what their religion was or what their political opinions were. None of these things should matter.
Yeah.
You should just be taking their work and appreciating it for what it is. And yes, there are creatives who take, more adult themes, definitely heavier themes, and might put them in their work like slavery, but that doesn't mean that they support slavery or that they like
Right.
slavery or something like that. It's simply a theme that is going into their work, and that does not represent them and their opinions. But that is how these activist loonies act these days, is they think, well, you put that in your work, so that must mean you support it, which of course is just it's terrible.
Right. And it's also a never-ending spiral. It's a purity spiral, right? Because Paizo was always more progressive, and Paizo, when it spun off
Definitely.
from D&D, like Pathfinder broke off, like I remember even the art from the beginning. It was, you had elves that were all kinds of ethnicities, and it was
Right.
always just, it wasn't Tolkien-esque fantasy. It was already this more diverse fantasy that was 2000s ish. But then that's still not good enough. It's still not good enough. It's always this, these people just want to have problems with something. It's like, if you have such a problem with what already exists, just make your own thing instead of complaining and trying to bother everybody else. Let people have their fun.
Exactly. And they're allowed to, but because they have no creative bones in their body and they can't create something new, they have to co-opt and they have to ultimately butcher what exists, and they end up ruining it, which is, so shitty, but it's the reality that we're living in currently.
Yeah, that's, go get a hobby, get a pet or something. Have
Right,
a
right. Do
family. Get
something
on the
different.
internet.
Yeah, do something different. I also see people saying things like swear inclusive channel. Definitely, definitely. I don't mind swearing, so it is
Yes.
what it is. I am so torn on Hasbro selling D&D to the CCP. Well, the thing is, right, is that Hasbro has already messed up Dungeons and Dragons so much. There's nothing that they could do at this point that could surprise me or worry me, because I have no emotional stakes in Dungeons and Dragons anymore, especially when, again, you've got like these creatives, these senior game designers basically calling Gary Gygax a racist. That's why I just don't have that love and passion and really stake in Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast in general anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I played like one D&D campaign. I'm not particularly attached to D&D anymore. It's just sad that, well, it started out as something that had a legacy, and they totally just took it and destroyed it, and they this is like the Lucasfilm being sold to Disney kind of situation. Well, it is
Oh
what
yeah.
it is, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you have aimed your content not just at comic readers, but also fans of manga and dark fantasy. And obviously, I'm sure that like Tolkien was part of that inspiration, and maybe George R. R. Martin, but who else was your inspiration? Or was there any specific work, like maybe movies, that you were very inspired by for Fiendish?
I am a big fan of a lot of manga, as I mentioned. Everybody, I see a lot of regulars for my chat in the chat as well. Everybody knows I love Berserk. I love Vinland Saga. Those are some of my absolute favorite mangas. But also Full Metal Alchemist. I don't talk about that a lot. That's something that I grew up with. I read Vinland Saga and Berserk later, but like Full Metal Alchemist, it blew my mind, along with Ghost in the Shell. But first, I read Full Metal, absolutely loved it. I'm actually revisiting the series now, and it's one of those series where you go back and read it, and you don't realize, oh my god, like this has affected how I write. I didn't even know that it was so formative, but it's amazing. That's such a good series, and it's honestly very nuanced and complex for a shonen with all the social issues that FMA deals with. And I go on about Berserk all the time on my channel, and of course fantasy novels. I'm a fan of both Tolkien and George R. R. Martin, and there's a little spattering of all kinds of other stuff. I got into ancient cultures in like my teenage years, so it's kind of this weird mix of. So I read a lot of John Grisham as well. I'm just my influences are all over the place, but so that's where the mystery comes from. I like mystery as well, so I like Lovecraft. I was reading a lot of Lovecraft and John Grisham, so I'm like, oh, I like mystery, so that's why I call Fiendish a fantasy mystery. It's deep world building. It's a whole like fantasy world that I built, and so there's a lot of classical fantasy influences, but there's a bit of horror, and it's a mystery story set in a fantasy world. Is how I should present this, and that's what I tell people that it is. But yeah, that's a general pool of influences that I draw from, at least storytelling wise. Artistically speaking, I'm all over the place as well, but obviously manga, and a lot of European comics as well. I'm a big fan of Mobius and Juanjo Guarnido, who drew Black Sad. I studied their work a lot when I was learning comics, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at kind of your work and the way that obviously you've described your story now and the story you want to go for, it definitely reminds me of things like, Death Note, Akame ga Kill, Claymore, Dorohedoro, all of these different things. And I personally agree with, you said this at the beginning, that when it comes to comics, there is kind of a lack of diversity in some genres, and I definitely do feel that way about fantasy comics. I feel like I'm constantly trying to find more fantasy, because fantasy is definitely a genre I absolutely love, and I think that is why so many people love Fiendish so far, even though you're really just getting started with it, because it offers something that is already lacking in the market. And of course, you could always go read a Brandon Sanderson or a George R. R. Martin or an Anne McCaffrey, but at the same time, what you are providing is a fresh take in the genre, but also something that still feels extremely familiar.
Right, that's what I'm hoping for, and what I'd like to set out to do, at least like a personal goal for me, is I don't. I know I'm never gonna like match up to all these grandmasters that I admire, but I think that as a creative, the best thing you can do is make something that's true to yourself, that's authentic. Like there is no real use to chase trends. Like, well, zombies are hot now, so I'm gonna draw a zombie comic because of that, or make something derivative just because I really like Tolkien. So there's so much fantasy out there that is basically a fan fiction of Tolkien or a fan fiction of something else, and that's been done before. And there's some good stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's derived from Tolkien, but I think because Tolkien is so rich, you can derive just entire worlds and extrapolate from that kind of general world building. Like Tolkien defined what elves and dwarves are. You guys know that didn't exist before Tolkien. Those were much more ambiguous fantasy terms, but But yeah, I think what I would like to do is make something that is just true to myself. So with the way that I build Fiendish, I think if you read Fiendish and I have world building information in the back of the comic, and it's this whole I thought about, well, how do I present in a comic form something that there's so much information, and it's sort of like my solution is, how in the Ghost in the Shell comics there are just sidebars all over the place because there's so much world building. So what I do is there's this in the back of my comic there's just pages and pages of world building. I have a glossary for all the language stuff because
it's very Robert Jordan Wheel of Time, trying to describe things very specifically and in a lot of detail, but of course in a way that is going to ultimately help your readers with your story.
I hope so, yeah, because that's the only way that it's kind of one of those presentation things where I'm learning how I can present this world in a way that, well, the comic itself has to be entertaining. I can't do exposition dumps and you're just like, I'm just lecturing about my world building.
Right.
The story has to be about the characters. You have to just be entertained by it. But if you want to find out more, you can go on the website. You can look in the back of the book. And I try to bring in experiences and aspects to my world building that probably are, I think, unique to me. So, for example, in the world building, I think I bring in some cultural stuff from Asia. It's kind of on the surface, obviously, Fiendish it's kind of where the story starts out. It's fantasy that's inspired by a lot of Northern European mythology, and it's a mix of Slavic and Nordic, and there's also a little bit of Anatolian that comes in later, and that's what the general continent that a story takes place is derived from. But for example, the language, I mixed in a lot of linguistic traits from Japanese and Chinese, and the language is a mix of logographic and phonetic, logographic and phonetic writing systems, and the grammar is based on Chinese, all these other crazy things, and the mythology is a mix of East and West. There's like a little bit of Shintoism, but I mix it with like some Nordic mythology, and that's what the spirit system is in Fiendish. So I'd like to bring in the best of what I like from different cultures from the East and West, because that's a perspective that I have, and I want to create something that I think hopefully will be cohesive and will be something new for readers that they might not have seen before. I don't want to present something that, well, I've read this before, I know where the story is going. I don't think anyone is going to be able to predict where the story is going. That's very important to me. So I want the world to be immersive, and I want the readers to always be on your toes. That's what I strive for.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I've seen some people in chat ask some questions like, do you, in a perfect world, let's say Fiendish makes $10 million overnight. Let's just theorize for a minute. Would you want to ever make like Fiendish games, or would you want to do like another series that goes along with it? Like, would you want to do some sort of like TV series? Like, if in a perfect world everything absolutely blew up and changed overnight, what would you love to do? Because obviously you're already doing what you love to do with Fiendish itself, but let's say you could, like, the sky was the limit, what would you want to do?
Oh boy. So I already have half a mind to make a game, but it's a tabletop or card game. I'm going to start out like not a video game. I'm not.
Right.
Video games are really expensive, and I have no idea how to.
Oh yeah, no, that is definitely a stressful process.
Yeah, I'm not there yet. Like the comic always comes first. Like if I make anything else, the comic comes first. But yeah, I'd like to definitely do a tabletop game. Either maybe I'll start it with a card game or board game is what I'm thinking, and eventually I would like to come out with the like a full tabletop role-playing game with my own system, and obviously I'll work with the game designer and figure everything out so you can play in the world of Fiendish with like the magic system that I created for the comic. So that's something that I can foresee in the near future. And as far as like other expansions, I mean, of course, in my head, it's like everything is already an anime. Like I see it play out like an anime in my head, and then I have to translate it into a comic. That's actually how it looks in my mind. So if that could be a reality, if Fiendish were ever adapted for the screen, I would want it to be animated, but I would want to have just basically full creative control. And which I can't. I've worked in animation, so I would insist that I'm directing this. Nothing is going to change, especially after what I've seen Hollywood do to multiple franchises I love. Like, I am controlling everything. You are not changing a single thing without my approval. But beyond that, I kind of don't want to get too crazy with it. I think the comic should come first. I think I would like to see more comics that are made just because they're meant to be good comics. Like, I'm not making Fiendish because I'd like to get a movie deal or I want to make it into an anime. Those are nice things that would be really cool. And if that does happen, I will do my all to make sure it's really good. But right now, I just want it to be a good comic, because I think that kind of commitment is how you bring in new readers to the medium. Like, if you make a comic and you half-ass it, and your intention is, well, I just want this to be like a Netflix pitch, or I want it to be a movie, the comic isn't good. You're doing a disservice to the medium. And I love the medium. I grew up with comics, so I want to just make a good book, and everything else comes after.
Oh yeah, definitely. I agree, and obviously I think what you're doing so far is really great, and so many other people do too. But it is a good question, because obviously, yes, you want to continue Fiendish and you want to make it as perfect as possible, but it's always nice to be able to envision what could potentially happen in the future. And I also saw Poncho had donated, saying, could there be a crossover with the Rippaverse, or even any other, any other up and coming either companies or growing companies, or maybe even other creatives that you'd love to work with? Let's make it maybe like a general question, but yeah, definitely. Could there be a crossover with something like the Rippaverse?
I'm more than open to that, as long as other people are open to it.
Yeah.
I'm actually, I have, I'm friends with a lot of other creators, and I have one in the works, and we've already announced it. There's another comic called Goblin Girl, and it's a fantasy book that's a little raunchier, not like totally rated R, but you'll see if you check out Goblin Girl on Indiegogo. It's drawn by Dan, a good friend of mine, and we have a crossover in the works already. And there's and I have like little joke crossovers with some of my friends that we're planning on doing, but all of us are really early on in our projects. Like, I'm on the third book, which is honestly, I'm amazed. It feels like everything just like flew by, because honestly, you spend a whole year drawing a comic, and before you know it, you have 3 books. It's kind of crazy, even though it's so much work. But yeah, I have some small crossovers. It's as in just like one issue planned with some friends. I'm open to doing more, as long as it doesn't get in the way of finishing the main comics.
Yeah, awesome. Poncho also said, when the creator cares, success is inevitable. And I definitely agree with that.
Oh, so yeah, I think I'd like to think that it's but you can't just, you can be very passionate about something. The truth is, passion doesn't necessarily generate success, though, and that's one of the hard truths that I think it's a hard thing to swallow for creators, because, and I've experienced this, that I've been making comics for a really long time. Like, Fiendish isn't even my first creator-owned thing. I did a web comic. I've been making short comics, self-publishing comics for like over 10 years on and off now. I've written things. I've tried to get ideas pitched, and it's been a lot of failure. And I've always been really passionate about what I do. But sometimes it's just about, you have to keep at it until the right idea comes and the right time comes, and you can reach the right audience, because it's a big world and there's a lot of people trying to create stuff out there. And there's a lot of finding success as a creative that is honestly just luck and chance, but you never know if you don't try.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I completely understand that with, my YouTube channel. I've been at it for like 3.5 or 4 years now, and I'm very grateful for the audience I have, but it definitely comes down to, at a lot of time, luck. And, that's just the way that the cookie crumbles.
Yep, it definitely does.
Yeah. So, guys, we are going to be slowly winding down the stream. Rini, why don't you give us your best Fiendish shill? Shill as much as you want. Tell us about it. Tell everybody about it. Maybe doesn't know. Different things that you could compare that could really get them interested.
Oh yeah, all right. So if you love fantasy, if you love Tolkienist fantasy, if you play D&D or Pathfinder, and you love fantasy that has a lot of deep world building, you want to just be immersed in a new fantasy world that has mystery and a little bit of horror sprinkled, and this is the series for you. This is Fiendish Chapter 2.5 is the third installment in my comic series. I already have chapter 1 and 2 are already done. They're like 50 and 60 page books, so you have a lot of material. I just looked at all the material I have, because I'm thinking of compiling it, and it's like 150 pages. So this series is progressing along really well. We have a lot of material already, and I'm sure that if you want to just sink your teeth into a really compelling mystery that is set in a world that has never been done before, because there's there's all the rules for this world, everything that goes on in it, all the cultures and the magic system, and definitely the characters. Everything is something that I spent a lot of time building. Everybody that watches my channel knows I'm all about the nuance. I have like 2 shows that are about writing and world building, so I can go on and on about this stuff forever. I can talk
Yeah.
about the world of Fiendish forever, and I have to stop myself from getting into spoilers and just spoiling my own book. But I'm all about that slow reveal and showing you guys this reveal through this journey that my characters are taking. So take a look at Fiendish. You can also find out more at fiendishcomic.com. I have all the information on there that isn't spoilery. I have a free preview. You can read 20 pages of chapter 1, and I have like a little 5-page snippet of chapter 2 as well. And I have character profiles. I have my world map and a bunch of information about the cultures in my world. So go take a look at that, and I'm sure you're going to love it.
Yes, I definitely agree. And I see some people saying, rocked my Fiendish beanie on a live stream recently, which is awesome.
Cool!
Clint
Awesome!
is
Thank
also
you!
saying, got in on the Fiendish campaign, but tipping Vera instead of Indiegogo. Well, I appreciate that, of course. And I'm very happy that you have backed Fiendish. That is awesome. And I'm really glad to hear that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But guys, with that being said, that's going to be about the end. I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for stopping by tonight. I do appreciate it. I hope the rest of the campaign goes really well. I see that you've got a couple of days left on it, and
Yeah.
you know, I'm really happy to see the success. And obviously, I hope that it continues into this, finishing up this campaign and then the next campaigns and whatever else you decide to do in the future with Fiendish.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on. This is a really great discussion. I had a lot of fun, and thank you so much to the chat and to people that have supported Fiendish. You guys are the best. I really appreciate it.
And guys, don't forget, all of the links are in the description. Her YouTube channel, her X, the Fiendish website, the links to, you know, support through Indiegogo, all of those links are in the description. So definitely go and check them out. And guys, I will be live, of course, tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern for our normal gaming live stream. And hopefully in the future, maybe Renie can come back on and talk some more about Fiendish and the industry.
I would love to. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you guys for stopping by, and have a very good rest of your evening, everyone.